Ronan Emmett is my name, and I work for Boston Scientific in recruitment. I'm joined by my colleagues here, Lorraine from Galway, Geraldine from Clonmel, and we also have James as well, who's going to talk to you a little bit about our products. I suppose just to start off or whatever, I know you've been looking at a lot of PowerPoint presentations. How many people in the room have heard of Boston Scientific before? Okay, you all have. Can any of you tell me any of the products or things that we do in Boston Scientific? Stents as well. Anybody else? Catheters, yeah, that would be. Okay, so yeah, you know them actually. So stents would be built out of Galway facility. All right, let's look at who we are. So Boston Scientific is one of the world's largest medical device companies. We employ 24,000 people worldwide. Actually, in Ireland, I'm going to talk a little bit about our Ireland operations in a moment. We're US headquartered, actually out of Natick in Boston. 13,000 products within the portfolio of Boston Scientific, so that's really interesting that you mentioned stents and you mentioned catheters. So that's probably two out of a very large portfolio of products. And some of those products are really innovative products. I'm not an engineer, I'm a HR person, and I'm always amazed actually. When I joined Boston Scientific, I was telling my father where I was going to work, and I told him I was going down to Boston Scientific, and his reply to me was, I have a lot of their product inside me. So he had some heart issues. So they do some really innovative products. In terms of profit actually, so they reported revenues in 2014 of 7.4 billion. They operate in 40 plus countries, so Ireland is one of the major manufacturing facilities outside of the US, and then across Asia and across Europe actually we would have a number of sales support offices. And we're either number one or number two in 75% of the markets that we operate in. In terms of manufacturing sites, there are 18 manufacturing sites worldwide, which takes us nicely into our Ireland operations. So Boston Scientific started in Ireland back in 1994, was their first manufacturing facility outside of the US, based in Galway, in Ballybridge. So Galway is the largest of the Boston Scientific sites, and primarily what they concentrate down there would concentrate on the traditional stents, balloons, the catheters that everybody knows. But Galway would also be the main research and development facility for the Boston Scientific family outside of the US. In terms of Clonmel, and just in terms of the numbers, so upwards of 2,500 permanent employees in Galway. In terms of Clonmel then, Clonmel tends to concentrate on the pacemakers, actually, they have 700 people, and then in Cork then, Cork looks at products around interventional cardiology, peripheral intervention, endoscopy and neurology, and 800 people. So it gives an indication of the amount of people that are employed within Ireland. So we would be the largest medical device employer within Ireland, actually. So we're quite big and we're getting bigger, which is good news from a recruitment point of view. It's really interesting, our impact on patients' lives. So every year, 5.5 million devices are used in procedures around the world using Boston Scientific products. So if you look at the numbers, out of 5.5 million devices, 2 million procedures per year, which looks at 170,000 per month, 8,500 per day, 350 per hour, and 6 per minute. And the reason that I bring that up is that this is a 15-minute presentation that I'm going to do, so at the end of it actually multiply your 15 by 6, and I'd like to tell you or talk to you a little bit about the number of patients' lives that have been impacted just during this talk alone. In terms of our Ireland operation actually, would anybody have any idea on the amount of products that we export from Ireland in a year on numbers? Would anybody care to guess? 5 million? Okay, so upwards of 10 million products are exported from Boston Scientific Ireland every year. Alright, so it's quite sizable. So what do our products do? Our products are used to treat some of the world's largest diseases, actually, and I suppose we could look at those in terms of four. So heart disease, responsible for half of all the deaths in the European Union. Chronic pain impacts 50 million people in the US alone. Cancer, which is a huge killer, 7 million deaths per year. And then lung disease, which is 300 million. And again, when we look at some of our products, they're really innovative in terms of targeting those products. One of the things that you hear an awful lot about in Boston Scientific when you come to work at, in terms of is research and development, and you also hear people talk an awful lot about new disease states. So in terms of our research and development, Boston Scientific are constantly looking to what are the diseases that are out there, what are the things that are impacting people, and that guides the research and development strategy in terms of being able to develop innovative products that are going to save people's lives. In terms of our core business, actually, so our core business is around interventional cardiology. So this looks at our products for people that have artery disease or other cardiovascular or heart disorders. Actually, peripheral interventions actually looks at some really innovative products that we have around renal therapy, so blocked arteries, renal denervation techniques. Cardiac rhythm management products, it looks at heart failure actually, so it looks at pacemakers, a lot of what Clonmel does. Electrophysiology, actually technologies such as catheters, an awful lot of our products that use radio frequency energy. And one of the products that actually I would highlight here is one called Alair, which is a groundbreaking device that we have now at the moment, which is used for treating chronic asthma, or asthma that's not able to be treated with normal medicine. We then look at endoscopy, so that looks at treating diseases of the digestive system, the airways and the lungs, urology and women's health, disorders in the kidney, bladder stones, urological and gynecological problems, and then finally neuromodulation actually, so implantable technologies for managing chronic pain. So they would be the core businesses that we're involved in at the moment. I'm going to pass over to James Murphy. James Murphy is our engineering manager, and he's going to talk a little bit about just more detail on some of the products for any engineering people.
Cheers, thanks Ronan. Good afternoon everybody. So as Ronan has outlined, we're involved in a huge range of medical devices here in Boston and in Ireland. In Cork alone we manufacture 43 different product lines. Mainly servicing interventional cardiology, peripheral intervention and endoscopy. Medical devices, in terms of their definition, there's a wide range of definitions around them, but it can range from everything from medical thermometers, their X-ray equipment, balloon catheters were already mentioned, we have stone extractors in Cork, to Alair, which is a device for treatment for bronchial thermoplasty. So again, we cover a huge range of medical devices across the Boston family in Cork. Pretty much all of the devices that are manufactured in Ireland in Boston Scientific are minimally invasive, with the exception of the CRM group, so the cardiac rhythm management group that are manufactured out of Clonmel, pacemakers and implantable devices. They're the only offering that are not minimally invasive. And I guess the key message that we're trying to send there is that what we're trying to do is positively impact patients' lives. We're trying to reduce hospital stays and decrease surgical times as much as possible, and that's why all of our devices are manufactured with that in mind and reducing the level of intervention for the patient. So the therapies that we currently manufacture in Ireland, that is the full range of a selection from the range that we make across Galway, Cork and Clonmel. We already touched on the stents here. People recognise that we do a huge amount of self-expanding stents, truck-loader stents in Galway. Ronan touched on the Alair device. This is a new device that we've just released from being manufactured in Cork. As I said, it's a treatment of bronchial thermoplasty. So for people with chronic asthma, this is being shown to be hugely successful in the treatment of people with severe asthma. Just being released in the States, and it is under submission in many other countries around the world at the moment. This slide really is just to give you a feel for the broad spectrum of devices that we currently make. As I say, 43 manufactured in Cork, it's a multiple of that in Galway, and in Clonmel we have a huge offering in the pacemaker range as well.
So just if anybody's interested, actually out on our stand in stand 210, actually we have a sample of some of the medical devices that we make, so take a trip along actually to the stand and talk to some of our engineers, talk to James, and they'd be happy to show you actually what they do. So why are we here? So we have a number of open roles. We're doing quite a lot of recruitment across our 3 plants, across Cork, Clonmel and Galway. So we're here to meet you and hopefully be able to sell Boston Scientific to you. And certainly if you want to be a part of the Boston Scientific group, we want to talk to you. It's really interesting when we look at Boston Scientific, one of the quality statements that they have, and you'll see it everywhere in Boston Scientific, they talk about I improve the quality of patients' lives and all things at Boston Scientific. And when I joined Boston Scientific a year and a half ago, I'm not that long with them, actually, this was something that I taught, and you can be skeptical at times. You can think, oh, this is a nice buzzword they use, or it's a nice mission statement that they use. But really what amazes me in Boston Scientific, one of the things that I was really blown away about was every year they run an event in Boston Scientific called Everyone Makes an Impact. So when we go down to the people that work on the production lines and the floors, the engineers that provide support on those lines, people working in finance, procurement, planning, all across the different functions. We got a team out who went out to one of the hospitals in Ireland, actually, and we got permission from one of the consultants to actually go into an operating theatre and to actually film a procedure on a young woman who had a disease and was being treated for that. And what was really interesting was as the woman went through, actually, you see the surgeon, you see the consultant actually reaching from the shelf and taking the Boston Scientific product and using that Boston Scientific product in that person. And at the end of it then, what we were able to do was we were able to look at the batch number and we were able to look at the lot number of that product. And we were able to bring up the pictures of every single employee who worked on the line and who actually made that product. So it was really about making the link that what you do every day in Boston Scientific really does have an impact actually in somebody's life, alright? So that's very important. What do we offer in return to come and work for us? Well, let's look at some of the different types of roles that we have on offer. So we have big demand for R&D engineers, research and development engineers, primarily based out of Galway. Across all of the sites then, we're looking for people who have specialisms in logistics, supply chain specialists, production supervisors are always in demand, so if this is something that interests you, we'd be very interested to talk to you. We're particularly interested in looking for manufacturing engineers and senior manufacturing engineers. So what we find that when we go out to the market and we look for these people, actually we'll get any amount of graduates that will apply, but probably those type of people that we're looking for with the 5, 6, 7 years experience, actually they're not so much on the market, so we're always interested in talking to people around that. We have openings across finance and accountancy, we have openings across planners, buyers, quality engineers are another large part of what we do because we're a regulated company, and then finally we would always be recruiting for technicians across the board. In terms of what we offer, actually, so we offer a very competitive base salary, so we'll offer a salary that's very much in norm or above what the market will pay for that. But we have a number of very good fringe benefits. So Boston Scientific offers a very good pension scheme. We offer a very good bonus scheme where primarily, typically the minimum bonus somebody will come in on is a 10% bonus on top of their yearly salary. We pay up to 8% of a contributory pension. We look at paying healthcare actually for you and for your wife or husband or any dependents that you have. Probably one of the things that I'm really proud about in Boston Scientific is in terms of our commitment to retention and our commitment to development. So if we look at Boston Scientific across the board, probably last year almost close to 50% of our open roles were filled internally by people actually moving up and promoting, alright? But when people move, it opens backfills. So again, these are sort of an array of some of the types of roles that we're looking at. You can check out our stand at stand 210 or log on to our website at www.bostonscientific.com/careers. So what do you gain about coming to Boston Scientific? So we recognize that what makes people great in Boston Scientific, be it as a quality engineer, a manufacturing engineer, an R&D engineer, a production supervisor or a technician, is somebody that's worked in multiple functions or multiple positions. So we'll give you that within Boston Scientific. So a lot of our employees will actually come in, spend a number of years in a role, and what they'll do is they'll rotate or they'll move somewhere else within the business. So there's opportunities for that. So you get knowledge from each of those departments, and when you've worked cross-functionally within those departments, that makes you a really, really good engineer. We run very large production products, so as I mentioned earlier on at this, so 10 million devices are exported annually from Boston Scientific in Ireland. So we have state-of-the-art machinery and technology within all of our plants. So as an engineer, you're going to get to work with that. We have our very traditional products such as our stents and our balloons and our catheters, but we also have very innovative products that James mentioned, such as Alair actually. So they would be more of what I call the sexy type products that engineers actually like to work with. We're a fully regulated environment, or a fully regulated company, which means that we're regulated by the FDA in the US, by DECRA in Europe, and then by the Health Products Regulatory Authority in Ireland. So all of our buildings are clean room facilities. So it means that anybody that comes into our clean rooms is fully gowned, is fully head clothes, fully gowned, footwear, no jewellery, etc. And then finally, for those of you that are interested in people management opportunities, there are opportunities to manage a team, and then again we have learning and development, and we have different internal training programs that help you do that. The type of people that we're looking for, so we're looking for people that are already highly engaged and highly motivated actually. So we look for a driven, ambitious, committed, loyal, enthusiastic, somebody with a winning spirit and success orientated, and they're the people that actually make our top talent. In terms of our recruitment process, actually, so it varies a little bit across actually the 3 sites, but typically all of our applications are submitted online, actually using the bostonscientific.com/careers website. What will happen is when your application is received, it will go to the recruitment teams and they will shortlist and they will be in contact with you then. But typically our recruitment process consists of a combination of maybe video interview technology to do initial screening, to face-to-face interviews actually between the hiring managers and recruitment, and then across some of the sites we make use of assessment procedures, which actually looks at your personality, it looks at how you like to work and whether you would be a fit for Boston Scientific. So I'm not going to keep you much longer. As I was saying, we would love you to come out to our stand. We're just out there behind actually. So again, I have my colleagues here from Galway, I have my colleagues from Clonmel, so we'll be able to talk to you about all of the different roles that are open. Come talk to us, ask loads of questions, see how our products work, and we look forward to meeting you. Thank you.
Any questions? How you doing? Peter Lewis in GIT. Just a question in terms of graduate recruitment. I've been working with the Career Service. Obviously there's sometimes a gap between graduates, big demand in industry for graduates and for employees, but not everybody graduate succeeds in getting those positions when they go through the process. What are the biggest gaps, do you think? What's that disconnect that certain graduates are not producing that means they can't fill this great demand?
Yeah, so one we see actually, so we have a number of graduate programs in place within Boston Scientific. So I'll talk a little bit about the application. So within Galway, Lorraine, how many graduates would you take per year in Galway?
Our dedicated graduate program, we take about 16 in Galway.
16 in Galway. In Cork, we would take 3 on a very formal graduate program. But just to give you an example of some of the numbers, for those 3 in Cork generated 541 applications for those 3 positions. It's a 3-8-month rotation program where they come in and rotate around the company. In terms of what sets them apart, actually very little usually. So what we're seeing from graduates now at the moment is they're very well qualified academically. So what happens is we can only use that as a shortlist. So we'll take the minimum 2-1 and we place them into a poll, but that's not enough anymore. So we now actually look to graduates in terms of what work experience have they got, if any, and for some graduates we know that they don't have because they've been studying, so we look at what they've done within the community, voluntary experience. What I will say to you from a graduate point of view is, I see amazing things every day in Boston Scientific. Classic example would be somebody sending me a graduate application from an email address, bigjohn35tequilaslammer@hotmail.com. Alright, so very practical things. If you're applying for quality positions, don't tell me that you have an attention to detail in your CV littered with spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. And I suppose the reason that I mentioned those numbers is in terms of when we do initial shortlists on CVs, and you have 541 applications, a recruiter on the team is giving that CV less than 1 minute to place them into a shortlist bucket. Actually, so the advice we give is to actually have the key information at the top of the page. Actually, don't make it hard for a recruiter to actually see that. In terms of the gap from the graduates actually going and then into that 5, 6, 7 years, probably what we found that when things got bad within Ireland, probably some of our brightest and some of our best engineers left Ireland actually, and they went to places like Australia, they went to Canada, they dispersed all over the world. Probably we want to target a lot of those people at the moment because some of those people are now in the position whereby they're having families and they actually want to return. Maybe they're not aware of the positions that are at home. So we definitely see a gap actually with that. From a company point of view, we actually believe strongly now in terms of changing our model to look at graduates. So we will now actually look at graduates, bringing them in terms of offering them 24-month contracts initially, and really developing our graduates. So turning our graduates into that and actually giving them the space to grow. So it's a combination of both. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, do you use placements and internships as well?
Yeah, we do. So between all three sites, actually, we do have a number of placements as well. I know from, we're not going to lie, UL is a strong partner of ours at the moment, actually, and the reason that UL is a strong partner is that we find that they produce very well blended graduates. It's a 9-month placement that they have, but I'm a graduate of DIT, so I'm very open
Can I just add there, actually, I would say that, probably from my own experience, I would say that the placement is critical to any graduate, and from a screening or CV perspective, if they don't have that 6 or 9 month placement, they really get screened out, in all honesty.
And summer placements don't exist so much, they're not long enough, or?
No, they're not long enough. To come into an organisation like Boston Scientific, you're 3 months on site before you really can add any value to the org. So I would think the colleges, and I know we've worked a lot with all of our local colleges and expanded, but where you can have your programme that includes that placement either through the 4-year programme or at the end of it, that's really the only way that large employers like ourselves are going to utilise more graduates.